Women wanted to talk about anger, identity, politics, etc. I saw posters in Berkeley urging them to join groups. I saw their leaders on TV. Strong, articulate faces. So, when Kavanaugh phoned and invited me to join a men's club, I laughed. Slowly, not laughing, he repeated himself. He was 6'9". The size and weight entered his voice. He and some friends wanted a club. A regular social possibility outside of our jobs and marriages. Nothing to do with women's groups. One man was a tax accountant. Another was a lawyer. There was also a college teacher like me, and 2 psychotherapists. Solid types. I suppose there could be virtues in a men's club. A regular social possibility. I should have said yes immediately, but something in me resisted. The prospect of leaving my house after dinner to go to a meeting. Blood is heavy then. Brain is slow. Besides, wasn't this club idea corny? Like trying to recapture high school days. Locker room fun. Wet naked boys snapping towels at each other's genitals. It didn't feel exactly right. To be wretchedly truthful, any social possibility unrelated to wife, kids, house, and work felt like a form of adultery. Not criminal, not legitimate. Kavanaugh, I don't even go to the movies anymore. I'm talking about a men's club. Good company. You talk about women's groups, movies. Can't you hear me? When the phone rings, it's like an attack on my life. I get confused. Say it again. Listen to me, man. You're one of my best friends. You live less than a mile away. But do we see each other 3 times a year? When's the last time we talked to each other? Really talked? I lose over a month a year just working to pay property taxes. Friendship is a luxury. Unless you're so poor it makes no difference how you spend your time. A men's club. Good company. I hear you. But I was thinking about good company. Some of my married colleagues had love affairs, usually with students. You could call it a regular social possibility. It included emotional chaos, gonorrhea, even guilt. They would have been better off in a men's club. What do you say? Can we expect you? I'll go to the first meeting. I can't promise more. I'm very busy. Yeah, said Kavanaugh, and gave me an address in the Berkeley Flats. A man named Harry Kramer lived there. I was to look for a woodward fence and pine trees. The night of the meeting, I told my wife I'd be home early. Before midnight, certainly. I had to teach the next day. She said, "Take out the garbage." Big sticky bag felt unpropitious, and my hands soon smelled of tuna fish. After driving only 5 minutes, I found the place. The front of the house, vine-covered, seemed to brood in lunatic privacy. Nobody answered when I knocked, but I heard voices, took hold of a wrought iron handle, and pushed, discovering a large Berkeley living room and 5 men inside. I saw dark wood paneling and potted ferns dangling from exposed beams. Other plants along the window ledges. A potted tree in a far corner, skinny, spinsterous-looking. Nervous yellow leaves filled its head. Various ceramics, bowls on tabletops and plates on the walls, beside large acrylic paintings. Abstractions like glistening viscera splashed off of a butcher's block. Also an amazing rug, but I couldn't take it in. A man was rising from a pillow, coming toward me, smiling. I knocked, I said. "Come in, man." "I'm Harry Kramer." "I'm Kavanaugh's friend." "Who isn't?" "Really," I said, giving it the L.A. inflection to suggest sympathetic understanding, not wonder. Kramer registered the nuance and glanced at me as a potential brother. His heavy black hair was controlled by a style, parted in the middle, and shaped to cup his ears in a way that once belonged to little girls. It was contradicted by black force in his eyes, handshake like a bite, and tattooed forearms. Blue winged snake, blue dagger amid roses. They spoke for an earlier life, I supposed, but Kramer wore his sleeves rolled to the elbow. It was hard to connect him with his rug, which I began to appreciate as spongy and orange. I felt myself wading and bouncing through it as Kramer led me toward the men. Shaking hands, nodding hello, saying my name, each man was a complex flash. Eyes, hand, name. But one had definition. He was graphic, instantly closer to me than the others. Solly Berliner. Tall, skinny, wearing a suit. Dead white hair and a big greenish light in his eyes. The face of an infant surprised by senility. His suit was gray polyester, conservative and sleazy. Kramer left me with Berliner beside the potted tree, a beer in my hand. A man about 5'6" or 7 came right up to us. Care for a taste? In his palm lay 2 broken marijuanas, slick with spittle. I declined. Berliner said, thanks, with frightening gratitude, and took both cigarettes. We laughed. Then he dropped one back into the man's palm. Turning toward the others, the man said, "Anyone care for a taste?" The sound of Berliner's voice lingered after the joke, loud, impulsive. Maybe he felt uneasy, out of his natural environment. I couldn't guess where that might be. He was a confusion of clues. The suit wasn't Berkeley. The eyes were worlds of feeling. His speedy voice flew from nerves. Maybe the living room affected him. A men's club would have seemed more authentic, more properly convened elsewhere. What did I have in mind? Cold ditch? I suppose Kramer's wife, exiled for the evening, had cultivated the plants and picked the orange rug and the luscious fabrics on the couches and chairs. Ideas of happiness. Berliner and I remained standing as if the fabrics, heavy velvets, beige tones, were nothing to violate with our behinds. It was a woman's living room, but so what? The point of the club was to be with men, not to worry about women. I turned to Berliner and asked what he did for a living. "Real estate," he said, grinning ferociously, as if extreme types were into that. "Wild fellows." I drove in from San Jose. He spoke with rapid little shrugs, as if readjusting his vertebrae. His eyes, after 2 drags on the cigarette, were full of green distance. He was already driving back to San Jose, I figured. Then he said, "Forgive me for saying this, but a minute ago when Kramer introduced us, I had a weird thought." "You did?" His eyes returned to me with a look I'd seen before. It signaled the California plunge into truth. "I hope this doesn't bother you. I thought—" I waited. "Ah, forget it, man." "No, please, go on. What did you think?" "I thought you had a withered leg." "You did?" "Yeah, but I see you don't. Isn't that weird?" "Weird that I don't have a withered leg?" "Yeah, I thought your leg was all screwed up, like withered." I wiggled my leg. For my sake, not his. He stared as if into unusual depths, and seemed, regardless of my wiggling, not convinced. Then he said, "I'm 47. "You look much younger." This was true, but with the white hair, he also looked older. "I stay in shape," he answered, marijuana smoke leaking from his nostrils. "Nobody," he said, sucking the leak back against the crackling sheets of snot, "nobody else in the room is 47. I'm oldest. I asked the guys." He gagged, then released smoke, knifing it through compressed lips. "Kramer's 38. I wondered if conversation had ever been more like medical experience, so rich in gas and mucus. "I'm always the oldest. Ever since I was a kid, I was the oldest." He giggled and intensified his stare, waiting for me to confess something too. I giggled back to him in a social way. Then the door opened and Kavanaugh walked in. "Excuse me," I said, intimating regret, but moving quickly away. My friend Kavanaugh, big, handsome guy, had heroic charisma. He'd been a professional basketball player. Now he worked at the university in special undergraduate programs, matters of policy and funding. 9 to 5, jacket and tie. To remember his former work, the great naked shoulders and legs flying through the air, was saddening. In restaurants and airports, people still asked for his autograph. Things felt better, more natural, healthier with the big man in the room. Kramer reached him before I did. They slapped each other's arms, laughing, pleased at how they felt to each other. Solid, real. I watched, thinking I'd often watched Kavanaugh. Ever since college, in fact, when he'd become famous. To see him burn his opponent and score was like a miracle of justice. In civilian clothes, he was faintly disorienting, especially his wristwatch, a golden, complicated band. Symbolic manacle. Kavanaugh's submission to ordinary life. He didn't burn anybody. He'd once said, "I don't want my kids to grow up like me, necks thicker than their heads." He wanted his kids in jackets and wristwatches. He stopped slapping Kramer's arms, but Kramer continued touching him and looked as though he might soon pee in his pants. People love athletes. Where else these days do they see such mythic drama? Images of impeccable excellence. I was infected by Kramer's enthusiasm, a bit giddy now at the sight of Kavanaugh. When Kramer left him to get a beer, we shook hands. He said, "I didn't think I'd see you tonight." There was mockery in his smile. "It's not so easy getting out of the house. Nobody but you could have dragged me to this. You open the door, you're out. Tell me about it. I'm glad you're here. Anything happened yet? I'm a little late because Sarah thinks the club idea is wrong. I'm wrong to be here. We argued at dinner." He whispered, "Maybe it isn't easy," and looked at his wristwatch, frowning as if it were his mind. Kramer returned with the beer just as the phone started to ring. "I'll be right back," said Kramer, turning to the ringing. Sarah's word "wrong" seemed wrong to me. If something was wrong with Kavanaugh, it was wrong with the universe. Men could understand that. When Kavanaugh needed a loan to buy his house, the bank gave him no trouble. You could see his credit was good. He was 6'9" and could have run 100 yards in 10 seconds. The loan officer, a man, recognized Kavanaugh and didn't even ask about his recent divorce or his alimony payments. Men's clubs. Women's groups. They suggest incurable disorders. I remembered Socrates, how the boys, not his wife, adored him. And Karl Marx running around with Engels while Jenny stayed at home with the kids. Maybe men played more than women. A men's club, compared to women's groups, was play. Frivolous, virtually insulting. It excluded women, but I was thinking in circles. Men's club didn't exclude women. It also didn't exclude kangaroos. It included only men. I imagined explaining this to Sarah. You see, men love to play. Didn't feel convincing. She had strong opinions and a bad temper. When Kavanaugh quit basketball, it was his decision. I blamed her anyway. She wanted him home. The king became the dean. Kramer shouted from another room. "Is anybody here named Terry? His wife is on the phone. She's crying." Shouting again, more loudly, as if to make sure the woman on the phone would hear him, Kramer said, "Is anybody in this house named Terry?" Nobody admitting to being named Terry. Shouting again, Kramer said, "Terry isn't here. If Terry shows up, I'll tell him to phone you right away." "No, I won't forget." When Kramer returned, he said, "You guys sure none of you is named Terry?" Kavanaugh muttered, "We're all named Terry. Let's get this club started."